all of these operatives had been put into place, and they were there. It was like having sleeper cells of anti-Semites that were acting at a lower level, much lower level. And then on October the 7th, it's like they flicked the switch and released them. And we saw demonstrations, these so-called spontaneous demonstrations happened literally on October the 8th while we were still counting our dead, before we had been to Gaza, so they couldn't accuse us of that. And, we saw them in New York City. We saw them in Sydney. We saw them in Toronto. We saw them, all over the West, in London, literally on October the 8th. And, it's no coincidence, for example, that when the tent camps went up in the aftermath of October the 7th, that they were all the same brand. They were the same color. They were the same. They were organized in the same orientation. As I said, this is because this thing is paid for and organized by a central force. I think the majority of people hate these demonstrations that are happening in their cities. They are not anti-Semitic. They're not even anti-Israel. I would suggest that most people are generally favorable, but they're not activists. And what the Muslim Brotherhood has going for it is a lot of money, and they have activists, people who are spending literally their daylight hours thinking about how to spread hatred against our community.
This week on J100, we're joined by one of the most visible and consequential philanthropists in the Jewish world, Sylvan Adams. At a moment when Israel is fighting not only on the battlefield, but in the arena of narrative, legitimacy, and morale, Sylvan Adams has emerged as a singular figure, someone who has tried to strengthen the country both materially and symbolically. He has used philanthropy to fortify Israeli institutions, used sports and culture to project a different image of Israel to the world, and more recently stepped into an even more formal leadership role as president of the World Jewish Congress Israel region. In the last few years alone, he has made massive headline-grabbing commitments to Ben-Gurion University and Soroka Medical Center, both rooted in a larger vision for the Negev, national resilience, and Israel's future. But this conversation is about much more than money or headlines. It's about family, history, memory, and identity. It is about what it means to be the child of Holocaust survivors and to build a life of Jewish pride and purpose. It is about Aliyah, the meaning of Jewish homecoming, and the conviction that Israel belongs not only to those born there, but to Jews everywhere. And it's also about the deeper civilizational battle now unfolding around antisemitism, anti-Zionism, and the future of the Jewish people in both Israel and the diaspora. Here is my conversation with Sylvan Adams. How are you? How's your family? How's Israel at the moment?
So my family isn't here. I'm by myself. Our kids never made Aliyah with us because, as I like to say, they left us. We didn't leave them. They grew up and we were empty nesters. And so we made Aliyah 10 years ago. And my wife had a pre-planned trip scheduled prior to this war. So she went to be with the kids. We have 7 grandkids, so that's her priority duty. So I've been here the whole time.
Got it. And they're in Montreal in Canada, or they're
No, we have 2 kids in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
We have one in Vancouver and one in Montreal. We have 4 children.
Very nice. Okay, beautiful. Are you lonely? Or you're hanging in okay?
I'm used to it because she goes on grandma duties, Safta duty, frequently. So I'm used to it. But we will all be together in Pesach. We use the Jewish holidays to reunite the family.
And that's in Israel or that's in North
So
America?
we'll actually be doing it in Spain. So neither
Oh,
neither nor we will be
got it.
meeting in Spain.
Beautiful. Okay. A place that's very friendly to Jews right now.
Well, look, the people are not unfriendly to Jews. It's they happen to have particularly bad leadership, and that in fact the prime minister will likely lose the next election very, very badly. He's very unpopular, so he can vent his spleen all he wants. He's not a popular character.
So what we mentioned offline that we had our J100 gala on Monday night in New York, and Isabel Ayuso, the president of Madrid, actually sat right next to me throughout the evening, and
Yeah,
she's a
she's
wonderful.
outstanding. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's outstanding. So she's a again. So it's not a universal story in all of these centers of anti-Semitism. We have haters, of course, but we have in my experience, and I travel quite a bit. In my experience, we have far more friends than we do have haters.
right. It's important to
The
keep that.
problem is the
Yeah.
problem is the haters are extremely vocal and noisy, and they catch all the attention, and you know that's what sells newspapers, and so they do catch a disproportionate amount of attention to our detriment.
How do you think we can respond to that effectively?
Yeah, that's a question that has a complex answer. We need to deal with the leadership of this that is fomenting all of this hatred, which starts with the Muslim Brotherhood, which is supported by principally by the Qataris and aided, of course, by their axis of evil partners in Iran. And also the Chinese that have more recently joined the party, because not that they have any issue particularly with Jews or with Israel, but they use it as leverage in their anti-Western activities. So we are a pawn in that game, in the game of superpowers. So it's a complex issue that needs to be confronted at the head. It's like we're dealing with Iran right now militarily, which is the body of the octopus. And again, the body of this anti-Semitic movement is the Muslim Brotherhood, and its tentacles reach every single Western city, and you know, with imams and preaching blasphemous anti-Semitic things right from the pulpit, and from there it goes to their to their partners in crime, the crazy extremist leftists who and anarchists and all of those people who, again, they themselves have paid operatives in every single city. And more recently, we've seen this cancer grow to the right to the right side in America, to the likes of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owen, and again, these are people who are paid operatives of the Qataris, and as I said, the Qataris have agents in every city, multiple agents in the bigger cities, that are acting in nefarious ways to attack Jews and to attack Israel, but really their whole thing is to attack Jews and to attack the West itself, because that we're just the first line, we are the canary in the coal mine, and their beef is with Western civilization. So this is truly a clash of civilizations,
Fascinating, sad but fascinating description. Thank you for that.
and
Let's
we need to wake up. We need to wake up. We need to identify this phenomenon. And so, if I may expound further,
please.
which is that, you know, all of these operatives had been put into place, and they were there. It was like having sleeper cells. um, sleeper cells of anti-Semites um, that were acting at a lower level, much lower level. And then on October the 7th, it's like they flicked a switch and released them. I guess they thought that we were done. We were, we were caught. We were caught completely surprised, and we were reeling from the events of October 7th, and we saw demonstrations. You know, these so-called spontaneous demonstrations happened literally on October the 8th while we were still counting our dead, before we had been to Gaza, so they couldn't accuse us of that. And we saw them in New York City, we saw them in Sydney, we saw them in Toronto, we saw them in all over the West, in London, literally on October the 8th. So this was planned, and I guess they thought they would be able to finish us off once and for all by flicking this switch. And as they've seen, we are more resilient than that. But this threat of anti-Semitism all over the world, and as I said, both on the left, but now increasingly also on the right, is an existential threat to us. We can't live in isolation. We are members of the world community. We are a trading nation, and we can't have Israel cut off. And of course, um, they can say that it's all anti-Israel stuff. That it's not. It's really not anti-Semitism. It's not true. We've heard them. We've heard these demonstrations. We've heard them say the crudest anti-Semitic slurs. So they've been exposed. We know who they are. We just need a plan, a master plan to push back.
You operate, you know, in the highest levels of Jewish leadership, if I'm not mistaken, World Jewish Congress, etc.
Yes,
Like
I'm the
what?
to inform your viewers. I'm the president of the Israel chapter of the World Jewish Congress.
Okay, so the answer is, I mean, not the answer. The question is, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, maybe this sounds crazy. Why don't we, like the Jewish people, take a lot of our wealth and a lot of our philanthropy and create our own quote unquote sleeper cells, good sleeper cells, and start protesting against Muslims and against their anti-democracy and their anti-Western values, and kind of counter it, do exactly what they're doing, but do it better. Like, I mean, I haven't seen anybody say that or do that. I understand alliance to some degree, because like it's not it's classless, it's tactless. But I'm curious, like, is this talked
So
about? People
so
thinking about?
so so I'll tell you that I mentioned that this is not spontaneous. I mentioned that they have operatives in every city. This comes with a huge ticket price. The Qataris have spent $1 trillion in this campaign, and they have a 25-year head start on us. So while what you're saying makes some sense, because it would be interesting to expose um, the misogynist, racist, beginning with anti-Semitism, totalitarian, uh, Islamist philosophy. It would be good to expose it. We'd have a hard time to co-opt the leftists, because they were easy prey for this campaign of anti-Semitism. And everybody thinks Jews control the world. Jews are wealthy. Jews are white. We've had these labels attached to us, so we'd have a little bit of a hard time to attract passionate supporters. We have the majority of the people. I'm convinced of that, as I said, through my travels, and I think the majority of people are hate these demonstrations that are happening in their cities. They are not anti-Semitic. They're not even anti-Israel. Of course, they're being fed a lot of negative news about Israel, and about our war effort. But I would suggest that most people are generally favorable, but they're not activists, and what the Muslim Brotherhood has going for it is a lot of money, and they have activists, people who are spending who are spending literally their daylight hours thinking about how to spread hatred against our community. So
Well,
it's not as easy. It's
no,
not as easy as what you just said.
no, of course, of course, of
But
course.
of course, listen, any right thinking person should be able to call them out. But of course, you'd be called an Islamophobe if you did so, and you'd be shouted down. So it's a bit of a tricky thing that we need to stick handle. But I know that with
That was a hockey analogy. I caught that.
yeah, yes, I am Canadian originally. You know, the fact is, we have a lot of talent in the Jewish world. We have a lot of talent you know, Israel is known as the startup nation. We will get this thing figured out. We won't need $1 trillion. AI is a force equalizer, and we won't need 25 years. You know, they started with Al Jazeera, which again, I encourage any of your listeners, if they want to know what's going on that side, to force themselves to watch Al Jazeera. It is atrocious, the reporting that they do. It's very damning towards us. And I only get to watch the English version of Al Jazeera. The Arabic version is much worse, but of course I don't speak Arabic.
We call ourselves we're the Allgemeiner Journal. Now we're Allgemeiner, but allgemeiner.com. But we used to be, our origins are Allgemeiner Journal, AJ. So often I'll say to people, a little facetiously, but not even, that the Allgemeiner Journal is the antidote to Al Jazeera. They're AJ, we're AJ, and
Yeah,
I want to tell you one other thing as a philanthropist you'll appreciate. I once heard a beautiful analogy that, you know, a charity box, it's stuck a box. So if it's filled with coins and you shake it, it doesn't make a lot of noise. But if
right.
it's relatively empty and you shake it, it makes a racket. That's exactly what you're saying. Like it's a minority of people, but they're very outspoken, and the
Yes.
majority tends to be relatively quiet. So that does an apt analogy for what you're describing.
But they are poisoning the minds of the people that I call the silent majority. So that majority, and I like your analogy because they really are the silent majority, and your tzedakah box, they don't make that much noise, right?
Right.
Um, but but they through negative reporting.
They're not immune. They're not immune. They're influenced.
Yes,
That's your point.
yes, and especially the younger cohort that also is being brainwashed at their educational institutions, and we know how much money we've all read about, how much the billions that Qatar is investing on U.S. campuses. And, you know, it's no coincidence, for example, that when the tent camps went up in the aftermath of October the 7th, after of our invasion of Gaza, when the tent camps went up on U.S. campuses, that they were all the same brand. They were the same color. They were the same. They were organized in the same orientation. As I said, this is because this thing is paid for and organized by a central force.
Okay, no, it's important to educate people that they should be aware of this if they're not yet already. It's critical. Let's take a step back, if we may. You grew up in Montreal, if I'm not mistaken. I'd love
Yes.
to hear a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, your illustrious parents. You're getting rooted in Jewish leadership and in philanthropy.
Well, thank you very much. So I was born to Holocaust surviving parents who emigrated from Romania, but both of them had stops in Palestine, which became Israel, and on their way to Canada, where my parents met. By the way, they didn't meet on their journey until they were introduced by common Romanian acquaintances. And so the story, each of them had a slightly different journey. My father was conscripted into slave labor, so the Romania joined the Axis powers, and so they were never invaded until the very end of the war by the Nazis, and they had their own fascists in power. And they said, we'll deal with our Jews, and so they basically enslaved them, and they put them to towards the war effort, filling sandbags and doing whatever. And as my father liked to say, they forgot to feed us. And so they were working them and starving them to death.
Right.
And my father, through some ingenious means, managed to get himself false identification papers, and was able to jump on a boat in the Black Sea port of Constanza, sailed to Turkey, took the train through Syria, Lebanon, and eventually to Palestine. My father ended up fighting in the War of Independence and became a shaliach because Romania spoke the second language of Romania was French. So they sent him to Algeria to help Jews that were being expelled after the creation of the state of Israel, and to give them sort of orientation camps as to what they could expect when they came to the Holy Land. And then he and a friend of his, they were in Marseille, France, and they basically jumped on a boat, two young men, and sailed to Canada. My mother's story was a bit different. She was an only child, and my grandfather was a tailor, and the family lived in hiding, but my grandfather was able to go out and do his tailoring jobs and put food on their table. And in 1947, they sailed to British Mandatory Palestine, and the boat was turned back because the British were. It's basically the story of Exodus. My mother's boat was sent to Cyprus, where they spent 6 months in an internment camp before the state was declared, and they were able to come back. My mother did her high school in Israel, and
Wow.
then emigrated. My grandfather couldn't stand they didn't have air conditioning. He couldn't stand the heat in the Holy Land, and he needed to find a new place to live, and that's why they left.
Interesting. And why specifically Montreal? How did that end up being the destination?
Yeah, I guess because they spoke French. I think that was the common denominator. I think that again, in my grandfather had been in the French Foreign Legion as well,
Okay.
and they spoke French, so they were able to come to Montreal and be very very comfortable in the French language. And the same would go for my father. It was because of Romanian, by the way, is a romantic language, and so it shares a lot of similarity with French. But French
Okay.
was the second language of the country.
Very interesting. Okay, so they come, they meet. They're now in Montreal.
Actually, Quebec City.
Come
Actually,
back.
Quebec City.
Okay.
So I grew up in Quebec City, which is almost 100% French Catholic society, but we were about 100 Jewish families living in Quebec City, and
Mhm.
they were a lot of the retailers, the dry goods stores were owned by Jews, and we used to go. My parents would take the kids to the synagogue every Shabbat, and that was our connection. That was our community and our connection to the community.
Okay. And how did I think your father began real estate development? Is that the business that he
So,
that
so
he
the reality was, my grandfather in the old country, he was a tanner. He operated a tannery, and so
okay.
he dealt in animal hides. And my father was used to help him from a young boy, from a very
Very,
young age.
very, very Talmudic. I like it. Okay.
Yeah, and so when he came to Quebec City, he ended up going to work for a Jewish merchant By the way, name, I'll tell you a funny anecdote about my last name, which is Adams, a very Anglo-Saxon name. Well, my father's name was Abramovich, the son
Right.
of Abraham, and he went to work for a Jewish merchant by the name of Buschenbaum. And back in those days, and so my father was a very talented employee. He not only was he very knowledgeable in the business, and my father was like a human computer. He was a calculator. He could do math in his head, that very, very, very sophisticated math very quickly. But on top of that, he also spoke French. So he was a major asset to Mr. Buschenbaum. But one thing that irritated Mr. Buschenbaum was, my father would have these phone calls with the peddlers in the countryside, and he would have to spell his name. And these were all long distance phone calls. So he started Abramo. And Mr. Buschenbaum says, okay, that's it. You're costing me a fortune in long distance. From now on, your name is Adams. And my father legally changed his name to Adams, and I was born Adams.
Terrific. It's not like Buschenbaum had such a great name either, but I guess he was the
No,
boss.
that's the funniest part of the story. Mr. Buschenbaum asked Mr. Abramovich to change his name.
Okay, terrific. Wow. So tell me a little bit, just you as a child, kind of like your worldview. Where did you think you were going? What were your exposures? Kind of like what was like
So
what was yeah.
So we moved to Montreal eventually, the bigger city, because when my brother reached high school age, there really weren't any good high schools in Quebec City, and my mother decided to move us to Montreal. And I grew up in a very Zionist home. Both of my parents had lived in Israel, and they sent us off to a Jewish youth movement, a Zionist youth movement, the Hashomer Tzair
Sure.
movement, the most left wing communist ones. And you know what they say? If you are not for the left when you are young, you have no heart. But if you remain for the left when you are older, you have no brain. So I guess that describes the evolution in my thinking,
Okay.
which is to move away from some of those communist roots. Fast forward to my post college days, and before joining the workforce, I
By the way, your father wasn't formally educated, is that correct?
no, he was expelled from high school by anti-Semitic an anti-Semitic school principal. And Jews weren't allowed to finish their education during the war, and so he never finished his even his high school education. And it's something he carried a chip on his shoulder. He had intended to go to university and study economics, and he carried a chip on his shoulder despite his considerable success in business in his career. He always had a chip on his shoulder that he was not a university graduate. And at one time he got some literature from Harvard University continuing education, where they offered these business courses. And my father showed me the pamphlets. He says, "So what do you think?" And I said, "I think it's a great idea, as long as they ask you to teach the course, not take the course." So I guess that was a good enough answer for him to
But he just taught himself math. I mean, he just taught himself sophisticated mathematics, I'm saying.
Yeah, no, he was brilliant at computational arithmetic. I
Yeah.
wouldn't call it sophisticated math. At arithmetic, he could multiply 6 numbers by 6 numbers in his head.
Okay. Don't mess. Okay. So you're fine. I cut you off. So you were now progressing. You're now
Yeah, I went on a long travel. I figured I'll go and see the world, and I started out in Europe, and as the weather got colder towards the winter, I kept going south, and eventually, I jumped over to Israel, which I always thought I was going to want to spend time in Israel, and I went to a kibbutz. And which kibbutz? Of course, I went to the kibbutz Artzi movement, which is the Hashomer movement for the real authentic experience. And there, I met this wonderful, on like my second or third day, I met this wonderful woman from the United Kingdom, from London, and I was literally struck by lightning. And love at first sight. And
How old were you guys around? Early 20s?
So yeah, my wife was about 20, and I was maybe 23.
Okay.
Uh, and and let's just say we got married on my way home. I stopped in England, and we got married. And my parents didn't know about it. We basically, I guess you'd call it, eloped.
Okay.
And we've now been married. We're just about to celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary. So I guess I made a good choice.
Mazal tov, beautiful. And your wife's family story also was Holocaust rooted?
No, my wife was not. My wife was Catholic, brought up
Okay.
as a Catholic,
Okay.
and that was another good story because my parents picked me up. I'd been away for a year, and my parents picked me up at the airport. My wife came just a few weeks later. She needed to sort of wrap up her own life over there, and so they say it's great to have you home. How was your trip? And I've said, yeah, I have a small thing to tell you. And I mentioned, I got married, and my mother burst into tears. My father almost drove off the road, and of course, what's the next question a Jewish mother asks? Okay, she asks, is she Jewish? This is par for the course. And I said, not exactly, but she has a Jewish heart.
Okay.
Okay. And I that didn't necessarily go over so well, particularly well, but my wife ended up converting. And in fact, she became very, very close with my mother. And my mother passed away quite young. And I think that my wife was her favorite daughter, even more so than my two sisters.
Wow. So why was your wife on kibbutz? Like considering her background, why was that? Why was that where she was? I don't understand.
So she had um, her mother passed away when she was 11 years old,
Right.
and her father remarried with a Jewish lady, and
Okay.
she had a son in Israel, and so Margaret heard all these stories from her stepbrother, and so she was curious to go and visit Israel, and she ended up on a kibbutz, and here we were.
Fascinating. Okay. Terrific. So now you're married.
Yeah, and then I grew up in I went back to Montreal. I joined my father's business.
Were you thinking about anything else, or that was obvious to you?
No, that wasn't obvious to me at all. In fact, I had completely different ideas. I thought I was going to go to medical school. In fact, I'd gotten an acceptance to medical school, and I was going to go. And then I kind of saw my father and his business, and I am one of four siblings, but my father always had his eye on me in terms of the business. He thought I had the talent in the area of business. I have an elder brother who is a brilliant, uh, world-renowned scientist, very, very, very well regarded and well decorated scientist. And I have two younger sisters, and but my father had his eye on me, and he had built up quite a nice business in the real estate business. So he migrated from Mr. Buschenbaum, and so his story was that Mr. Buschenbaum had such a talented employee that he had promised him a partnership in the business. And at the end of the year, he gave my father, by the way, my father was earning an enormous salary at the time, $20,000, which was like, you know, in today's terms, this is in the 50s. In today's terms, it's probably a seven-figure comparison.
Wow.
And so he gave my father a very generous bonus. But remember, my father could count, and he knew he was being sold short. And what had happened was, at the synagogue, my father had been offered. People knew that he had a bit of money because he was earning a very handsome salary. And so he got approached by an attorney who talked to him about a real estate deal, and he kind of put everything together. He had the land, he had the builder, he had all he needed was the developer. and so my father invested in these duplex properties, and he would at work at night and on the weekends, and he would do this because, of course, he had his full time employment.
It was
Mr.
his side. It was his side hustle. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And when Mr. Buschenbaum, and he built up a whole bunch of these they became multiplexes, and he sold the first one and he made good healthy profit, and he sold the second one and the third one, and he thought, wow, this is a really good business. And when Mr. Buschenbaum disappointed him, he left his job, and he went full time into the real estate business. And after about 7, 8 of these transactions, my father thought he was going to retire because he had done so well. But of course, he had a very long career, and he worked up until his mid 90s.
Wow.
My father lived to the age of 100,
Wow.
and continued to come to the office until age 100. And I took over. I took over the family enterprise in the 90s, in my 30s. And yeah, and as my father told me, when he sat me down, he told me two things. He said, Sylvan, I want you to steal the business. And by that, he had his thick Romanian accent, and he had his interesting way of speaking, and English was his fifth or sixth language. And in fact, when I grew up in Quebec City, my father didn't speak English. He used to go to he went to take night courses to learn English, and I remember his homework, his phonetics homework, where he used to say, "The rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain," and I remember to this day. And so my father, in his colloquial manner, when he said "steal the business," what he really meant was to get myself involved in every area of responsibility, and take responsibility away from him. And he was a bit elderly in the sense that he had spent the war years in Romania, and he
Sure.
married quite late, and so he didn't need to tell me twice, and so I did exactly that. And my father said also, he said, Sylvan, I will take the business. I've taken the business from letter A to the letter D. He said, you will bring it from D. And he said, he said to the letter Z. We say Z in Canada.
Right. Okay.
Z for your listeners. And I'm quite sure I didn't take it all the way to the letter Z, but maybe somewhere in the middle of the alphabet.
That was my next question. Really was going to be. I was going to ask you to articulate for our listeners. Not obviously, you're a very humble person. I just mean like, if you had to articulate and formulate what your unique contribution in the business was, what would you say?
My father and I were very, very different, extremely different. My father was a brilliant entrepreneur, um, and but very, but all he always was calculating. He was very good at calculating the odds on things because he was good in computational arithmetic, and but he didn't plan. He just didn't have a plan per se, and I was more of a planner. So I would say that the two of us, we complemented each other extremely well, and we had very productive years together. And yeah, and I learned many lessons from my father, not only business lessons but life lessons. And he was a great storyteller, and I find myself, these days, very often, I find myself quoting my father from some of the wise things that he told me.
Beautiful. I look forward to hearing some more of those quotes shortly or postscript. Fascinating. Are you still working today, like in the business, or have you
Um,
passed on to the
so,
next generation?
so,
How does it?
so I'm working. I'm working. Um, I'm working. I'm working in business, yes, but my passion and my main work, I would say, is on behalf of the Jewish people.
Okay.
So
Beautiful.
I'm very well known in Israel as a philanthropist, having done an, quite a number of projects. I've also done some very large scale events, where I've shown Israel on the world stage to literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of television viewers. So I call them all first time visitors to Israel via their TV screens.
Okay. Amazing.
I brought, for example, the world's most famous athlete, Leo Messi, who now plays for Miami.
Oh my goodness, I wish we had this conversation before Monday night because my dream was to bring Messi to the gala with Malay, but I couldn't get to Messi. Oh man.
Okay, okay, so
Oh
so
no, I mean, I'm a little sad to hear this now, but
yeah,
okay,
well,
everything is bashared at the right time.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yes, yes. So I brought Messi to Israel twice. Once with his
Wow.
national Argentinian team, and once with his club team for the. This was interesting. During COVID, we hosted the championship game of the French Soccer League, the Trophée des Champions,
Okay.
and Messi came as part of the Paris Saint-Germain team that he played for. And the reason we held the championship game of the French Soccer League in Tel Aviv in Bloomfield Stadium was because the stadiums during COVID, the stadiums in Europe were all closed to live spectators, and Israel had opened up. We were that much further down the road because of our status as an innovator for Pfizer, and our stadiums were already open to fans, and so we made a deal to bring the championship game to Israel. And Leo Messi has himself 400 million social media fans. So
Awesome.
when he's tweeting that he's in Israel, so it drew the game itself drew about 150 or 175 million TV spectators, but then the social media effect of having again such a famous athlete here was great. I brought a very big bicycle race. Your viewers might not be familiar with bicycle racing. They probably all have heard of the Tour de France. The second biggest race in the sport is the Giro d'Italia, and I
Okay.
brought the start. These are 3 week long bicycle races. They take the Giro means tour, and basically it's a tour around Italy. But every 2 years they have the start of the race in a neighboring country to again to arouse additional interest in the race. And I convinced them to come to Israel. First time they'd ever been outside of Europe, and we were seen by nearly 1 billion television spectators
Wow.
across Europe. And I'll tell you how I know it was working. Um, we hosted the Giro in 2018. Between 2018 and 2019, Israel led the world in tourism growth. So, you get 1 billion pairs of eyes being introduced to Israel. And I had people that I met, during my travels in Europe, and they said, wow, your country is so beautiful. I didn't know it was so beautiful. They all thought we were in a war zone. Of course, today we are. So it's not quite the time to.
You're the unofficial ambassador of tourism for the state of Israel, right? That's
Yeah,
more.
well, so when I moved, the week I made Aliyah, I had new business cards printed that with a title that read "Self-appointed ambassador for Israel."
Amazing. No, call kavod to you. Why did you make Aliyah? What was the story there?
Well, again, I met my wife in Israel.
But what
Um,
was the timing? What was going on at that juncture? I assume you'd been thinking about it for a while. I assume it's not the easiest thing to do, particularly if most of your life you weren't there. So many people
yeah,
struggle with this question.
so
So what was it for you that put it over the top? You said your children didn't come along, etc. I'm curious, like
yes,
what?
so on a cold, dark Montreal winter's night, I came home and I said to my wife, I asked my wife, I said, Margaret, what do you think about moving to Israel? And she answered with two things. She said, firstly, I always thought we would end up there. So that's the real answer to your question. And then she also added, let's do it. It'll be an adventure. And she
Okay,
was right on both counts. And here we are. We've been here for 10 years.
amazing. What has been different about living in Israel than you would anticipate it?
Well, first of all, I think my personality is very fits very well with the Israeli culture. You know, I think I drive like an Israeli, and
You
so
you
if you
seem relatively genteel to me. I don't know about that. Let's hear your perspective on it. Okay, maybe I'm not getting a good enough vibe.
yeah,
You
well, no,
me, I don't
listen,
know.
no, I don't shout. I don't shout in the street like you hear here very often. But so you know, I don't mean in every way, but I get the people here, and I love living here. It's a place where you know you feel very fulfilled. We live according to the Jewish calendar. Um, you know, we are not we're not religious. I would call us traditional. We light the candles every Friday night, and
Very
I'm not Shomer Shabbat. I ride my bike on Saturdays, and but I do fast on Yom Kippur, and we celebrate Passover. And I would say we are traditional. What they would I guess you could call us Masorti, um, and um, but it's a place where we can live as Jews, you know, and we live according to as I said, to the Jewish calendar. And we wish each other every week Shabbat Shalom, no matter where you are, what office, what outside location. And it's just a very lovely feeling to be a Jew and live in the Jewish in our Jewish homeland.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. So I want to explore with you two bigger theme topics now. One is sports, one is philanthropy. So let's start with sports for a minute. Just want to hear a little bit your origins in terms of your passion for sports and why that is the medium kind of you've chosen to basically be an ambassador, particularly through that special context.
So I myself am a cyclist.
Okay.
I took up the sport later in life, so I'm an amateur cyclist. I was never a professional, but I've done very well. I'm competitive, so I became a competitive cyclist, and I
Okay.
race in age group races, and I'm 4-time world champion. So
Wow. Well, I've heard. Okay. Don't
I'm
mess.
not 9-time Canadian champion.
Wow.
Uh, I have seven or eight gold medals at the Maccabi Games. I'm
Wow.
several times Israeli champion as well. I'm 19 times Quebec provincial champion. But I'm 4-time. I'm the only Israeli world champion cyclist in any category. Uh, so, I was, and I have to tell you, hearing Hatikva being played when you're standing up there after winning the world championship is the most beautiful, moving thing that you could imagine. And we had, you know, there are big crowds there, even at our races. And so that was lovely. So I came to the sport as a participant, but the fact is, with sport is the most watched thing in our world.
I have to
It's
imagine you know Bob Kraft. I'll imagine you must know Bob
yes,
Kraft, right? So
yes,
certainly he's also somebody who I think has used the medium of sports to be an
yes,
incredible ambassador for the Jewish people.
yes, certainly, certainly. So and sports is the thing that really people. The fact that we know Bob Kraft is not because he's a businessman; it's because he owns the New England Patriots. So
Exactly.
sports is something that connects people, um, and
Oh, wait,
it's
parenthetically, our honoree at our gala Monday night, Boaz Weinstein, is a hedge fund, uh, titan in New York. He mentioned in his speech that 48% of NBA owners are Jewish.
yeah.
So, so people are
But
figuring this out.
yeah, yeah. By the way, the NBA was founded by Jews. Even the players were Jewish back in the 40s when the
Really?
NBA founded.
You played
Um,
hockey when you were a kid. You played hockey. You must have played hockey when
Yeah,
you
yeah, I
were.
played hockey. I played all kinds of team sports.
Okay.
But then I ended up cycling took over my life, and I'm a single sport guy now
And you're
because
daily, like you must be working out daily. I guess you must be training more or less. Is that the way it works? Or
yeah, yeah, I ride my bike usually about 4 times a week, so not daily, but about 4 times a week. But you have to train in cycling in order to be good because these endurance sports are very unforgiving. You take a few weeks off and you're not very good. Your fitness, you know, it takes a
what,
lot of time to build up. It's very easy to let it go.
what's a daily
So
bike? Like what's a daily ride? Like a daily train is how long? Just when you're doing one of those 4 days,
um,
how long are you on the bike?
Yeah, I would say between 2 and 4 hours.
Oh, wow, it's serious. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, you really do need to spend time on the bike. And so, yeah, like as I said, sport has two features. Number one, it's by far the most watched thing. So when I did all of these big scale events here in Israel, by the way, I didn't only do sports. Have you heard of the Eurovision song competition?
Sure, sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So
Salva band, you know.
right. So Israel won the right to host the 2019 edition by virtue of winning the 2018 competition. Netta Barzilai won on behalf of Israel, and so we hosted it. So I brought Madonna here as to do a
Oh, I
cameo.
know. Okay, okay,
So
wow.
in order to and it was the most successfully watched um, the largest audience in the history of Eurovision. So again, it's part of.
You're thinking big. You're thinking big. You're thinking big.
Yeah,
You're thinking
yeah.
about how to. Right.
I like to deal. When I was doing these events, they were catering to hundreds of millions of people. Not
Amazing.
to bring. What's the best thing that we can have? And my experience with first time visitors to Israel is universal. Everybody says, everybody is surprised by the Israel that they come to see being so different than what is portrayed in the media. So my idea was to showcase Israel to large audiences of, again, the silent majority, people who aren't necessarily political, but who love sports and or music or culture, whatever, and and to introduce Israel into their living rooms, and as I called them, first time visitors to Israel via their TV screens.
It's brilliant because it's also subliminal. Like you're almost giving them the backdrop or the context. They're focused on the main thing, and at the same time, they're able to kind of be infused with this beautiful surrounding and backdrop to want to learn more and to come
Yeah.
to it. It's not in their face. It's very clever, actually. I think.
And the bike racing takes place outdoors. It's not in a stadium.
Right, 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 right.
And so when I brought the Giro here, it was all aerial photography, and because Israel is a small country, we had 3 days here, and basically you could see they ride about 120 miles a day, and so you basically could see the whole country in over 3 days. We had one full day in Jerusalem, in the national capital. Then we had the second stage start in Haifa, and they rode to Tel Aviv, and the third stage started in Beersheba, and they rode to Eilat. So you basically see the entire country. And as I said, it worked in the sense that we drew a lot of tourists thereafter.
Fascinating. Okay, great. So as we wind down, I have two more topics. So one is philanthropy. You know, you caught my attention post October 7th with some enormously generous gifts to hospitals, to universities, etc. And I think I read, if I'm not mistaken, that you may be the only Jewish person, not the only Jewish person, but you only Israeli maybe who is part of the Giving Pledge,
Yeah.
Prophet's Giving Pledge. I just want to hear.
So,
Uh,
by the way,
yeah,
just to show you, you mentioned that how many of the NBA owners are Jewish. I get the little booklet of the Giving Pledge, and I flip the book, and I'm telling you, like it's like 45% of the pledgers
are Jewish.
uh, are Jewish, despite the fact that Jews represent and it's a worldwide thing. There are about 270, 280 signatories of the pledge, and yes, I'm the only Israeli, and I thought I would lead by example and get other wealthy Israelis to join, but I've been unsuccessful so far.
Have you actively tried to get people to do it? I'm sorry, have you actively?
So I again, I'm probably the leading philanthropist in Israel, and I've done a lot of big projects, and I'm quite well known here. I get stopped in the street. People like to take selfies with me, and
I'm
it's
honored that we're
it's
talking. I'm honored that we're talking.
quite nice. No, no. Listen, it's quite nice. It's quite nice. It's not more intrusive than that, and so it's always
Hmm.
I'm always very happy to take a photo with people. And I don't consider myself to be a famous person. I call myself in Israel. I call myself like a minor celebrity. So I figured I would drag them along. And I have this idea as to why wealthy Israelis have not been as generous as they could be. Israel was a poor country until quite recently, until maybe 25 or so years ago. And it was always on the receiving end of philanthropy from abroad. And I guess that they didn't develop the philanthropic reflex that, for example, I grew up with in my home, where as my father's wealth grew with his success, so did his giving in proportion. And it's something that I learned at home, and perhaps that's missing. But I think, and I'm certainly far from the wealthiest Israeli, but I'm hoping that amongst the new the new high tech entrepreneurs that have had so much success, I'm hoping that is an element of their continuation, to give back to the country that has provided so much for them.
So I actually, before this J100 podcast, I had a podcast called the Jewish Philanthropy Podcast. It did over 100 episodes over
Yeah.
a period of 5 years with different philanthropists. It started during COVID. It ended when I came to the Allgemeiner. I always ask philanthropists, I'm always curious, like, is it easy for you to give away money?
Oh, I wish that those others who haven't developed this reflex would understand what a great feeling it is to give away money. And and really, it is. It's a cliche to say it's better to give than to receive, but the reality is it is so much better. And at some point, when you're wealthy enough, particularly when you're wealthy enough, how much is enough for people? And what do they become? Collectors, and collectors of what? Collectors of money. So I really I encourage people, um, especially here in Israel, to consider becoming more philanthropic, because it really is. It's very uplifting. It gives one's life greater meaning.
Right. But even so, no matter how much a person has, nobody has unlimited, maybe Elon Musk, but even nobody has unlimited resources. So I'm curious kind of what's your processes in terms of how you decide where to invest and where to what takes highest priority for you.
Yeah, so I have certain thematic areas where I do invest, and I like the word invest, because I believe that it is an investment
On the
in.
levels that you give, it is an investment. It's not just
Yeah,
not
yeah,
not to be
yeah.
misleading.
I try to strengthen Israeli institutions of late, particularly since October the 7th. I've done very large scale investments in the south of Israel, um, both to tell the people who are displaced from the Gaza envelope region, uh, that we believe in the future of the country, and in the future of their area, to encourage them to come back. But also, this is kind of Ben Gurion's dream, which was, to expand into the Negev. And so I made my two largest donations ever, $100 million to Ben Gurion University, which is the economic engine of the South, and $100 million to Soroka Hospital, that was hit by a ballistic missile, Iranian ballistic missile. So um, I'm I'm proud. I'm lucky. I consider myself lucky to be able to do this, and I'm very proud of it, to be able to do it.
Do these gifts come about because you're approached, or do you take the initiative? What's the processes behind how these particular things evolve? Or these were institutions I imagine you were already supporting before these gifts, all right? Like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So yeah, I in the case of Ben Gurion University, I was already a supporter of the university, and this was just bringing it up. And I announced this gift in the weeks following October the 7th, literally to give the country a boost, and a shot in the arm, um, when we were feeling particularly down at
Did
that
they
point.
come to you, or you were just on your own said, I need to do
It's
this?
It's a bit of a combination
Okay.
of both. We're in regular context, so it came up. It came up.
Got it. Okay.
And in the case of the hospital, it was in the aftermath of the ballistic missile strike. It was just something very symbolic to be able to go. I visited the hospital. I saw what they had done, and I began talking to them about what are we going to do to rebuild. And by the way, it's not just rebuilding the pavilion that was hit. We are redoing the entire hospital, and it's going to become the most modern, most complete facility in the country. And how nice it is for Beersheba. And and again, I've announced with the mayor of Beersheba a goal to double the population of Beersheba. And in my role, in my capacity as president of the World Jewish Congress, to bring 1 million new olim to Israel, to reinvigorate the country in a manner very similar to what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union. And really, that Soviet migration to Israel honestly saved the country, and it kept the demographic balance here. And it's why we have such talent distributed in all walks of life, and of course, including in our military. And it's part of our success. And with all of the anti-Semitism that is happening in the Western world, there's a bit of a push factor. But unless Israel has the pull factor to draw people in, that goal of 1 million olim will not be realized. So it's an ambitious project, but I think one that has a lot of merit. And as I said, as an olim myself, something that gives great satisfaction, the ability to live in our Jewish homeland.
We're going to wind down here. We at the Allgemeiner are read by a large swath of diaspora Jewry, both in Europe and in America, also in Israel, but predominantly in America and in Europe. What's your message for diaspora Jewry at this critical moment? What would you say to diaspora Jewry?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, we need your support. We're one people. And here's my main message. Israel belongs to all of us, okay? So both Israeli-born Sabras, immigrants to Israel, such as my wife and myself, and to all diaspora Jews, Israel belongs to each and every one of us equally. It's our Jewish homeland, and you should always feel welcome here. And please come visit us. We always appreciate tourism and visits from abroad, and a connection with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora.
Final question. I always ask my guests this final question. One thing about you that would surprise people, or maybe that people would not guess about you.
Well, I would say that I'm a pretty down to earth person.
I see that. I saw that when I met you, by the way, at that conference in Israel. You were just so a pleasure to talk to, like a regular guy.
Yeah. So I do think that I'm a regular guy, and maybe people read about me and see 100 million here and 100 million there, and they think that I walk around with an entourage. Here I am in my home. My wife is abroad. I have nobody else in the house with me, and I don't have staff. I don't have bodyguards. I don't have limousine drivers. I drive my own. I drive by myself, and I ride a motorcycle mostly to get around locally. I either walk, I take my bicycle, or I ride my motorcycle to most places. And for those of you who are Shomer Shabbat, you should know that I pretty much only drive my car on Shabbat because I put the bike in the car and drive out to the Judean hills where we have wonderful Shabbat rides with my friends.
Amazing. Sylvan, thank you so much for making the time, for sharing with us. It was really inspirational, motivational, instructional. So thank you again.
Thank you for the invitation, and always a pleasure to speak.